Let the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
I don't think they should be talking about the Manafort Trial, the extravagant wardrobes. I don't think that's as big of a deal as the secret offshore bank accounts, for crying out loud.
No, that was like to set a foundation for, like, it's kind of to manipulate the jury a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
look at this asshole.
Start with the fashion faux pas, then get into the felony offshore bank accounts later. I'm indicting him for the ostrich jacket. He's guilty. All right, everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Ben Kissel, hanging out with Marcus Parks.
Hello, Ben.
Marcus, they're yelling at Henry and I. They say we're not doing enough with the book. They say that we're making you work and your fingers are now bones. Just tell them that we're doing so much work and you're not even doing anything. Just be like, I don't do anything.
You're doing enough.
Thank you.
You're doing as much as you're capable of.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I'm capable of doing more. I use the analogy on Side Stories. You're like Charleston Heston when he spoke to the NRA, and he's like, when he's holding up the old musket,
Yes.
the newest gun in his collection,
You
apparently.
will take this narrative from my cold, dead hands.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about here. We got a bunch of stuff to get to. Donald Trump, he's in the news.
Yeah.
Can you believe he's in the news?
What did he do now?
I can't believe it. We're going to get into a little bit what's going on with him regarding, obviously, the NFL kneeling. That's back in his tweet storms. Yeah. That's a big thing for him. We also have the situation happening with Kanye West, which is kind of exciting. We got some celebrity gossip today.
I haven't even heard about this.
It's like a little Page 7 meets Abe Lincoln's Top Hat. And, of course, everything else that's going on in the world, specifically when it comes to the man himself, Mike Pence. He seems to be taking the lead on Space Force.
Space Force.
Which I can't wait. But let's start with the Manafort trial. This is day 9 of the Paul Manafort trial. He is facing, 300 years. I think more than Kuklinski is facing, the current subject of last podcast on the left. He's staring down the barrel of 300 years. This dude, Rick Gates, who was his number one guy, his number one henchman, his number one buddy, he testified. He's a key witness for the prosecution. Evidently, the prosecution right now is very mad at the judge.
Yeah.
And who knows what the hell's going to happen. Currently, the trial's delayed. But Rick Gates is on the stand. Again, the key guy. He makes, what's the name of the officer in the O.J. Simpson trial that was racist?
Furman.
He makes Mark Furman look like the greatest witness for a prosecutor ever. Because Rick Gates is just on the stand being like, I've stolen from Paul Manafort. I stole with Paul Manafort. We stole a couple of things together. I know where all the offshore bank accounts are. By the way, I had 4 affairs on my wife. Anyway, let me tell you what a bad guy he is. The jury's got to be sitting there being like, who the hell is on trial here? And what sweet-ass deal did Rick Gates get to sit on the stand and admit to multiple felonies over and over again? Who the hell knows? That seems to be the key witness. We don't really have a lot to go on when it comes to the prosecution's full case yet. Theoretically, they were suspected to perhaps end this week, kind of rest. The prosecution may have rested this week because I guess when the trial began, it was going pretty fast.
Yeah,
it was a Maserati of a trial, and since then, the Maserati has broken down. It's now on the side of the road, and we don't know if that car is going to run again. So it's possible, I guess, that we have some really big breaking news here at the end of this is Friday, or perhaps early next week. I don't know how much anger there is towards this judge, but apparently the prosecution has said on Thursday, the day of the trial on Thursday, the judge spoke out of turn, and he said the prosecution says the juror should not have heard what that judge said. We don't really know what the judge said, but perhaps it's enough to have a mistrial, and we just have to redo this entire thing over and over again, and we'll have to hear more about the ostrich jacket. If I find out Paul Manafort owns a pair of Uggs or Crocs, guilty without a doubt.
Oh, yeah. Now, the defense is using that old strategy is like, how can we trust Rick Gates? He hangs out with criminals like my client.
But in the minds of the jury, it is like, if you're the defense and they haven't had a chance really to get out there and with their guns blazing yet, I think Rick Gates is a pretty easy dude to pick apart. I mean, the guy is as flawed or more flawed than Paul Manafort. The one thing Paul Manafort didn't do was steal from Paul Manafort.
I mean, that's the problem. That's always been the big problem with
Right.
flipping witnesses. You know, whether it's this kind of trial or like a mob trial or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like anytime you flip a witness, that's always going to be the defense's strategy.
Right.
It's like we're just going to attack the character of this person
Right.
who was a close personal friend of my client.
Right, of course. I mean, and that's exactly what they're doing right now on a little bit of a different level. It's more of a PR level. Obviously, there's nothing in the courts about the Russian investigation, but when it comes to Michael Cohen, the former lead lawyer for Donald Trump, that's what they're doing to him now, too. Rudy Giuliani, many years beyond his famed rise after 9/11, where the nation actually loved him. I know for our younger listeners, the nation loved him at one point.
America's mayor. I mean, our younger, you really can't imagine how popular Rudy
He
Giuliani was.
that little guy who looks like he's maybe a relative of the uncle from Addams Family. He was America's mayor after 9/11, and my goodness, is he out there now desperately trying to say whatever to pretend as if Donald Trump will sit down with Mueller in that investigation. But we'll talk about that in a second. But that's what they're doing right now to Michael Cohen, discrediting this guy, saying he's a liar, he's a horrible person.
Always been a liar. Always been a horrible person, even though they said the exact opposite less than a year ago.
I have a feeling there might be a bunch of liars out there in Washington, D.C. So we'll keep you abreast of what's going on with the Manafort trial. The judge is really strict. Evidently, the jurors can't speak to one another, which is kind of rare. This is according to the legal experts that I have read. And we're learning a lot more about the offshore bank accounts. I believe there's 7 of them. And we talked about, I don't know if we talked about this on last week's episode. I don't think we did. We focused on fentanyl. If you haven't listened to that episode, go and listen to that with Ben Westhoff. Great interview, great guy. And I can't wait to read his book. But Manafort evidently in 2016 was dead broke.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, right around the time he started working with Donald Trump in the campaign, a little bit before, he got $60 million from these oligarchs in Ukraine and in Russia. Really interesting amount of money and an interesting time, certainly, when it comes to the campaign and receiving a bunch of money. Who the hell knows what's going on, but it doesn't look great.
Wasn't it around the same time that the RNC changed its platform to be a little more pro-Russia rather than being anti-Russia?
Well, I will say,
because remember that happened right before the RNC National Convention, is there was some very strong language about Russia
that was taken
in the
out.
GOP's platform, and that was taken out. I don't know if it lines up perfectly with the Manafort payment, but I do know that happened. That absolutely happened, that the GOP changed its platform. Remember this. Everyone needs to remember this. The GOP as a whole changed their platform to be more friendly to Russia.
Right. That has changed. I will say that. The new sanctions that Washington, Donald Trump, I guess, I don't think he wants these sanctions to be in place, but they are in place after the poisoning of a UK former spy, Sergei Skripal. They have new sanctions right now on Russia that is really crippling their economy. And Vladimir Putin, evidently, the best friend of W. Bush. Apparently Obama didn't hate him either. And now Donald Trump, he has promised retaliation. Mm-hmm. This is a move. It's going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in bilateral trade. Russia, which has repeatedly denied being involved in the attacks, responded yesterday. They called the U.S. sanctions draconian and rebuffed again the far-fetched accusations that they used any kind of nerve agent against someone because, former KGB spies don't know how to do that. That's not right in their wheelhouse.
Never happened before.
No, I didn't see anything. So it's funny because we have Donald Trump's rhetoric going over there, agreeing with Vladimir Putin over our intelligence agency, Dan Coates and the like. and then Congress passing some very strict sanctions that now Donald Trump is also pointing as proof to as why the Russians want to see the Democrats win in 2018 and they're and going forward to 2020. Again, even though Vladimir Putin openly said that he was very happy that Donald Trump won because Hillary Clinton most likely would have tried to Gaddafi him, and he didn't really want that to happen.
Oh, Hillary Clinton would not have tried to Gaddafi
That's the concern.
In Russia. No, she never, ever would have done that in Russia.
Oh, I don't know if that's true.
I don't think she would have.
She didn't give a shit, dude. Hillary was very hawkish.
No, I don't. She would not do that to any.
Well, she started
would not
with
do that to any nation that had nuclear weapons. Maybe she would have done it to somebody else, but she would not have done that to Russia.
They would have actively attempted to get Vladimir Putin out of power far more than Donald Trump. Absolutely, because she was already
tried
talking
to get him out
about
of power. But I think saying she would have Gaddafi'd him, because implies
it
that
would
Vladimir
require the
Putin that implies that Vladimir Putin would end with a golden gun up his asshole.
No, they don't have enough gold in Russia. He would have. It would have been a vodka bottle after somebody slammed it and then shoved it up his derriere. But without a doubt, she was already calling the election, rightfully so, illegitimate, because I think he won with it was a huge amount.
It was like 99%, 95%, 90%.
It was something pathetic. They never, if you're going to cheat and you're going to stuff the ballot, like 54%.
Yeah.
Make it reasonable.
Do it like we did with Bush Kerry in 2004 or in 2001. Yeah, let the Supreme Court steal it for you.
Get your own little Ohio situation happening. Flip some votes.
Yeah.
But we have the sanctions. Those are very real. They're hurting Russia. We have the what was it? $120 million worth of missiles that we've given to Ukraine. So it's this really strange dichotomy where there's a narrative that Trump is in Russia's pocket, but then we look at the actual situation happening with Congress and militarily within the Ukraine. I mean, I don't think the Russians are particularly thrilled right now.
No.
But when it comes to Hillary Clinton and Putin, they do not like each other.
Oh, I know that.
That was a fact. And of course, she was again rightfully calling his election illegitimate. The exact way she began with what ended in Libya. That's what she began. That's how she began to discredit Gaddafi, and rightfully so. He also was not really being elected fairly. But I would argue Libya was the only successful country in Africa. So I would say leave him alone, classic Kissel, because certainly now it's full of ISIS and no one is happier in Libya because Gaddafi is gone. Granted, of course, as with Saddam, they do horrible things, but it is what it is, and we can't go meddling. People talk about meddling in our election via memes on Facebook. That's really meddling in an election, giving a bunch of arms to farmers, and apparently, telling them exactly how to kill Gaddafi. That's the only way you can kill a supervillain, with his own weapon up his butt. I played Sonic the Hedgehog. I know how to do it.
Yeah. No, it's none of our business. It never should have been any of our business. Yeah,
I think it really hurt her. I mean, and so anyway, to wrap up the Manafort thing, that's what we know right now.
Just so everyone knows, we definitely got our standard relitigating the 2016 election reference into this episode.
We're not done with it yet. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with the Manafort trial. It could last another week. It could last another 2 weeks. Again, it's currently delayed, so we'll see if that's a big delay or a small delay, and they can figure it out. Or perhaps, again, maybe a mistrial, and then we have to go through all of this again. And quite frankly, I just hope it continues. I don't want to waste these 9 days. And we'll just see what the hell happens with Paul Manafort. That dude, the fact that he didn't bend whatsoever, the fact he didn't plead guilty and is going through this trial, I don't know what he knows. I don't know what the defense knows. Maybe he is just waiting on that presidential pardon. He might be the turkey of the day, and he might get pardoned. I don't know.
Or he might just be very aware of what the KGB is capable of.
Or that. Maybe he doesn't want to flip on them and blast some oligarchs that will then theoretically, or perhaps in the future, blast him. So who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But we'll keep on following that for you. And of course, if you want to go just read about it, I mean, there's a lot of speculation because there's no cameras in the courtroom, and the reports are the reports, and so they're kind of channeled through the minds of people who might have an agenda. But I'm happy that there are no cameras in the courtroom, because as we've seen time and time again, it just leads to a circus-like atmosphere, especially with a trial of this, with this national exposure, international exposure, really.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Kanye West. And we don't usually talk about artists or celebs here on the show, but he was on Jimmy Kimmel last night and he was defending his support for Donald Trump. And he said it took him about a year and a half before he was brave enough to come forward and say that he supported Donald Trump. He said that there was a lot of people in Hollywood that were like, yo, dude, if you say you support Donald Trump, you're like done.
Yeah.
And so Kanye naturally was trying to protect his career. So he didn't come forward. And then, of course, we know about the now infamous tweet storm. We also know that Kim Kardashian, his wife, her aunt was pardoned by Donald Trump, probably got in some brownie points for Kanye. But I was talking about this on Cavuto today. And we have to remember, 2016, I think, as a person who voted for Barack Obama twice, I think there's a lot of disappointment.
Yeah.
And I think that plays into why Kanye decided to go. It's a binary process. You only got one other option. Why he decided to go with the Republicans. He didn't like being told that he has to vote for a Democrat. He doesn't like the idea that the African-American vote is supposedly monolithic. And with Obama, it's like the Dems lost 1,000 seats across the country, governors, House seats, Senate. And the only major accomplishment was Obamacare that has since been gutted. He didn't get, Obama didn't get Merrick Garland through, which he could have done through a recess appointment if he would have just done it and, had a little bit more courage. So I think the African-American, obviously I'm not speaking for African-Americans. Look at me. I can only speak for Vikings and competitive eaters. But I have spoken to some who talk about how they were disappointed in Barack Obama because of the lack of accomplishments and because of the fragile legislative victories that he had. I think that played into it a little bit when it comes to the support for Donald. And then also, of course, to continue with the relitigation, with Hillary, the 94 crime bill, as we've talked about ad nauseum, the super predator, all that kind of stuff. There was just enough of a reason for someone like a Kanye West, I also don't think he likes to be told what to do, to say, okay, fuck it. I'll just go with this dude. And also, let's not forget, he's rich.
Yeah.
So
he's extremely wealthy. Yes, of course. Like the policies of the Republicans benefit Kanye West quite a bit.
Yes, the only color is green.
Yeah, but I also don't. I mean, the argument that you just made, it's like, I don't know. So you're saying that he threw a hissy fit because he didn't get what he wanted, so he went to the other side, and he didn't want to do what people told him to do, so he went to the other side. I mean, it's just
you don't like Rage Against the Machine. You don't listen.
Fuck you won't do it. You tell me.
I take it very literally.
I mean, it's reactionary. Reactionary shit is it's useless. It's thoughtless.
No, the question is, do people, what compels you to vote? Your wallet or your heart? I think he's going with his wallet, number one. And number two, I think he's able to overlook. I mean, that's the difficult thing about all of this. We have Donald Trump. This is the 1-year anniversary of Charlottesville. Yeah. It's been declared a state of emergency there in Charlottesville. The Unite the Right rally has moved over to Washington, D.C., and if they think they're going to get away with what they got away with last year, well, I don't think so. D.C. cops know about a protest or two. They have one every damn day to deal with.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be handled much, much differently. Donald Trump, as we all know, same both, good people on both sides. One of those sides contained neo-Nazis. I would argue that there was bad people on one side, worse people anyway. And then, of course, we have the ratcheted up war on NFL players who kneel. So you have these social cues that Donald Trump puts out there that are totally embracing of this alt-right white supremacist worldview. And then you have his economic views that really, I mean, you look at the economy, you look at those kinds of things, and it is going well. So if you're Kanye, I guess you just weigh the importance of who this person is as a man and what this person is doing to affect your life. And I guess he just has come out and said that he can deal.
Yeah, fuck everyone else. Fuck everybody else. Fuck what he's doing to the country. Fuck what his rhetoric is doing to this country. To hell with all that. I am sad because Obama didn't do what I wanted him to do. Or I'm sad, I'm not going to do what people tell me to do. Fuck all them. So I'm going to support this fucking beast.
Well, it's funny because he talks about love. that Jimmy Kimmel interview. He's like, if people could just love more and understand more, and it's difficult because you just want to grab them on the cheeks like the fat kid in The Sandlot. Was it that? He was just like, you shake them.
Yeah.
Or no, it was Billy Madison. I gotta get a Billy Madison reference in there where the fat kid with the cheeks is, so cute. Like my little Puffin.
Yeah.
Little Pomeranian.
Puffin's great.
But he's talking about how you gotta love and all this hate, and I do think there's too much hate. But the person who is really at the tip of the mountain when it comes to divisive rhetoric is the guy that he supports. So there's a little cognitive dissonance in there, and it is just one of those fascinating things. But I do want to be clear, if you're an African American and you want to support a Republican, you have every right to do it. And I do get what he's saying.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party didn't give the African American community a lot. Again, even under Barack Obama and under Bill Clinton, they sent them all to prison. Having doubling or even more than doubling the prison population. So I understand where he's coming from. And then we have the situation, and I'm not going to use Chicago in the way that everyone else uses Chicago. It's the 13th most dangerous city in the country. Yeah. New Orleans, I believe, is number 1. And St. Louis is number 2, I think. There's a lot of them.
There wasn't 63 murders over the weekend like Giuliani was saying. I mean, they're just telling these huge, blatant lies.
There is a lot. And Rahm Emanuel, if you are from Chicago, Democratic rule there, I don't think that you're very happy with the establishment.
Yeah.
And for him, he sees the Democratic Party as the establishment, plays into Trump's narrative of being anti-establishment. Of course, if you live in Alabama, it's the exact opposite. So you can have an outsider Democrat come in and say, wow, this guy is finally talking to me. But so that's my understanding anyway, my plebeian understanding of the mind of really a genius, Kanye West.
Right.
So I do think, who knows? And honestly, maybe his record sales go through the roof. I don't freaking know.
Yeah.
I mean, hip hop is like the number 1 seller among all groups. So maybe there's a bunch of rednecks now driving around listening to Kanye and listening to College Dropout. I don't know.
I seriously fucking doubt it.
Who knows? I watched but to that point that Marcus made earlier regarding, just kind of people being happy that other people are suffering, or maybe you didn't make that point, but I walked by a truck. Speaking of rednecks, it was a redneck truck. Not all pickup trucks are redneck trucks, but this one certainly was. On the back of it, it said "ha ha ha," and the H was in the Hillary Clinton campaign logo. You lost. And it's like, so he's just so happy. It wasn't like go Trump. It was like, haha, you lost. And that was his main motivation for voting. And you can't really take that out as a big factor when folks go to the polls, which is kind of unfortunate.
It's extremely unfortunate that actually matters to people, that this spitefulness, that I honestly, I don't know where it comes from. I really don't know where this extreme spitefulness for, specifically the Hillary Clinton campaign, where that came from. And for, leftists in general, because the right, no one seems to really have any ideas anymore.
No.
Because it seems like the right is very much, let's just, piss off the left, and the left is let's destroy the right. And no one's really coming up with any concrete ideas on how to actually do shit.
You don't think Space Force is a concrete idea? You don't think so?
Any ideas that are going to do anybody any good?
Space Force! What? I'm joining up for Space Force, by the way. You don't have any weight in space.
Yeah, that is true.
That'd be great.
That is true. And, Space Force is going to create jobs and such, but there are a lot of jobs that could also be created through rebuilding the infrastructure in America.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Things that won't, contracts that won't go to military contractors.
Right.
Those sorts of things because, by the way, Space Force will initially cost $8 billion.
Oh, it's going to be a pretty penny.
That is initially. That's only, that's just what they're projecting initially, and that's not even counting the upkeep, what it's like, and what it's going to cost us throughout the years. I mean, personally, I think Space Force is it's one of two things. It's either a gigantic distraction from all the other bullshit that's going on, whether it worked or not.
There is no one distracted right now.
I don't know whether it worked or not, but at the very least, it might be an attempted distraction, or two, it's a ploy to sell merch. And there's actual evidence that it's a ploy to sell merch because they talked about selling merch in the latest Trump email chain.
I'm actually going to buy one. I will buy a Space Force shirt. That must happen. I actually had a chance to talk to a guy who was very big in Ted Cruz's campaign. By the way, Ted Cruz was the one who looked at the porno.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a fact. And I was like, why did you do it on Twitter? He's like, We don't know. Apparently, Ted is a very nice guy to work for, so that's good to hear. But he was saying how, the military is already using NASA as a back channel. They spend a lot of secret dark money on what is already basically a space force. So Pence is proposing a sixth branch to the United States government. Of course, we already have a $600 billion U.S. military budget, which I think could definitely be lowered to help out with things, as Marcus mentioned, like infrastructure,
healthcare, but another thing that we could use a little bit of cash in.
There's a lot of ways that they could allocate funds better. That's for damn
we
sure.
can't afford healthcare, but we can afford Space Force.
Well, when it comes to it, it is real. I mean, China's up there, the Russians are up there.
Yeah.
These folks are all up there, so it is something that does have to be taken into account. Ronald Reagan, when he proposed the Star Wars plan, it's very fun. They said that's decades away, and as Mike Pence said, and we have to take everything Mike Pence says as gospel, as he speaks for the Lord. It is decades. It's been decades, so I do think it's like time that we have to address it as a serious issue. It's hard because it's coming out of the mouth of Mike Pence and the brain of Donald Trump,
and
but it is a significant issue.
I mean, yeah, it is.
What else do you want to call it? Space Squad? Come on.
I don't know. Something better than Space Force.
Something better than Space Force.
Space Force sounds like an eighth grader came up with it.
We don't know the age of the person that came up with it. Number one. We don't know, but you're a sci-fi guy.
Yeah, I know.
Space Force.
If I were to watch a movie and it was called Space Force, sounds like a shitty 80s sci-fi movie that sits next to Kroll the Conqueror and the fucking VHS tape.
What are you talking about? John Candy's a man dog. Space Force. We got a mog.
I don't know. You just expect it to sound a little more official. Space Force doesn't sound official. Space Force sounds like a shitty movie.
I just disagree. Well, everything does. We're living in it.
I mean, again,
we are in. Is this the Truman Show? I'm still waiting for a light to come and hit me on the damn head.
Oh no, we're a full year into dystopia. We're officially a full year into dystopia. I mean, some could argue that dystopia began around the same time as Charlottesville.
It's been happening for a while.
But American dystopia began around the same time that Donald Trump said there's good people on both sides, because that seemed to be, I think, for a lot of people. And it kind of seemed to me as well, because I remember reading that we were in San Francisco.
No, we were in Montreal. We were doing Just for Laughs.
Were we in Montreal, or were we at Outside Lands in San Francisco?
I believe we were in Montreal.
Huh.
I think so, because I watched it in the hotel room there. I could be wrong. I don't know. We travel so damn much.
We travel so much. But yeah, I do remember that being a time where like a little fuse kind of busted in my brain.
Oh, it was crazy.
That was just like, what? Like there's no way that the president said that.
Right. I
like,
know,
there's no way that the president of the United States actually said that. And that was really the first time that the wheels came off.
No, I know. That was the situation where it's like Aaron Judge playing a game of softball. I'm like, this will be an easy home run. And then instead he just totally whiffed. And I was like, how the hell did you mess up? Like, not condemning neo-Nazis. That is like pretty easy to do. It's easier than saying that you think there's good people on both sides.
Yeah, well, I mean, because that's when you really started to think, like, and that's when they really started to confuse everyone, because you had to face the fact that maybe he didn't mess it up. You had to face the fact.
No, he didn't mess up. He meant it. He said it 3 times.
Yeah, I
mean, he said it. And then he said it again. Then he fixed it. And then after the fix that was written for him, he said it again.
Yeah.
So of course, that's what he thinks.
But you had to face that, and that really was a brain breaking moment. And it changed. It changed the focus. It changed everything.
Sure. I understand what you're saying. It's interesting. So that Space Force, check it out. Very interesting. I'm excited to go up there. Sign me up for Space Force. I'll go throw a slice of pizza in the air, and then you can swim after it. But you're in air.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I love it. I love the whole idea. Let's get it done. But when it comes to what you were just talking about, there's a recent poll out, a Pew Research poll, and a lot of Republicans are thrilled about it. And I would caution them, and as I did today on Dana Perino's show. She's very sweet. She was the mouthpiece for George W. Bush, but hey, you know what? I guess we all have to have jobs. And she was a lot That was a different time. I did not like George W. Bush, but it was not those press briefings, even with Jay Carney, like it's a next level stuff happening with Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Oof.
And I give her credit, man. If Kuklinski could not kill her, like I'm telling you, like Richard Kuklinski would be like, I've met the ice woman. And then it would just be a marriage, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I would say more accurately, things that she's not doing, because she's not holding very many press conferences.
Well, it's there is a big issue with the rhetoric coming from Donald Trump when it comes to the press, and it's getting to be quite dangerous. We need to protect the First Amendment, the freedom of the press. Both sides are tearing apart the First Amendment right now, and I mean that. And we got to be very careful to stay like reasonable, and like speech that you don't like, it's still allowed, and then you're allowed to be like, I don't like that speech, but here's my speech, and then people can decide. But when it comes to Trump, the most recent Pew research has him at an 82% of a very warm feeling. That's kind of the language they used here. It was very warm or somewhat warm, or very warm to warm for President Trump.
Feelings towards President Trump from Republicans,
from Trump voters,
from Trump
so
voters.
Who knows who the hell that is? That's a smattering. 82% say they're very warm or warm towards the president, and I'm with you on that. Like, why? You might as well just ask him, like, how moist are you for the president? I do not like the language warm and Trump. I don't want to hear, because you just think, about something else. But if you look at the actual situation happening regarding the Trump coalition, 82% still support him, but that number 18% is huge. And this is what I was talking about today. Trump only won by 77,000 votes in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. He hasn't grown his coalition whatsoever. It's a really kind of bizarre, loose fabric that is holding this entire thing together. So he can't afford to lose 18%. So despite the fact that he's holding on to 82, it's still not going to be good enough if those numbers hold for 2020, assuming that Democrats, as they have been showing here with the most recent primaries over this past week, and next week we have a couple too, they are much more energized. These Republican districts that were once won easily by double digits by Republicans, although the Republicans have tended to still win in very close margins, considering where those districts are located. And obviously, as we saw in Pennsylvania 18, where Conor Lamb was actually able to pull off a big upset for the Democratic Party. Those numbers should be troubling for Donald Trump and for the Republicans going forward in 2018. Also interesting is 93% of Hillary Clinton voters, they are very cold towards Donald Trump. They are not at all warm. So you have 93% of Hillary voters who I think are mobilized and will definitely be out there voting, feeling very cold. 82% of Trumpers feeling very warm. That 18%, he has no room to lose anyone because he hasn't done anything to grow the party except for he did get Kanye.
Yeah.
I think voted for him in the first place. So
no, he didn't get.
Maybe he didn't get Kanye.
No, he's only going to lose.
But he's kept Kanye. He's kept Kanye.
He's only going to lose more and more people.
I would think so
as time goes on.
The Charlottesville thing, as Marcus pointed out, that was kind of a bellwether for a lot of folks, being like, "Can I stomach this?"
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the situation happening economically. If you're an economic conservative, you look at the tariffs and you're like, can I stomach this?
You're looking at all the children being separated from the parents at the border and asking, can I stomach this?
That's the funny thing. On Cavuto
and
today,
children that still aren't being reunited with their parents, by the way, and probably never will be.
No, because they don't.
They
don't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. It was the stupid. Jeff Sessions is one of the dumbest AGs in the history of this country. What a moronic plan not to have, like, when are they going to get back together? Well, oh, shit. What was that whole unification thing? Reunification thing? But when it comes to, so there's a bunch of different things that have occurred that sort of like slowly kind of peel away at the Trump support. Yeah. And I don't think, once again, he hasn't done anything to galvanize more support, maybe a couple of people here or there. But when it comes to the tariffs, the farmers are now super upset. I was talking to this gal on Cavuto today, and she mentioned how there's so many jobs, Americans can't even fill all of them. And I'm like, yeah. That's why we need a path to citizenship for undocumented workers. Yeah. Like, they don't even get their own. They're like bragging about having too many jobs. We can't even fill all of them. And it's like, no kidding, because we rely on immigrant labor. Yeah. And you are totally freezing out that entire group that this country has been reliant on since the beginning.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
If we don't fill those jobs, then growth is stale.
It's stagnant.
Yeah, stagnant. It's not going to happen. We have to have a workforce.
You got to, and everyone knows this. My father, a first generation, our friend Cena's dad, first generation people just work their tails off because they know another country where they didn't have the opportunity to work their tails off.
Yeah.
So they're happy as hell to do it. That whole thing, the immigration problem, no end in sight when it comes to family reunification. It's a political loser without a doubt.
Oh, but don't worry. Melania Trump's family, they've absolutely been reunited because her parents were just made citizens through what? Chain migration.
Yeah.
Which President Trump has again and again railed against.
Well, the merit-based approach does have some positive things about it. I mean, most nations do merit-based. And the immigration problem, I mean, it is very serious.
Yeah.
I get it. As we talked about with Ben Westhoff and stuff, there is a lot of drugs, like the fentanyl. The Chinese are really the ones who are making them. That was an interesting interview.
Yeah.
It was great. I didn't realize the Chinese are just like, they're factories. All they do is make fentanyl and be like, give it to the Americans.
Oof.
And meanwhile, the Chinese, evidently, they are into ketamine. That's
a weird
Isn't ketamine
drug.
like super intense?
Yeah. Fall in that K-hole, man.
So it's like, yeah, what is ketamine? What's the effects?
It's a horse tranquilizer.
It's a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, man.
Good Lord.
Special K.
No kidding.
Never done it myself.
Never. No.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
It's a heavy one.
I do not want to try it.
It's a real weird one to be popular.
Yeah, very, very strange. Very strange. Yeah, so the immigration thing, absolutely horrific. And when it comes to Trump, that base, who knows what's going to happen regarding that. Let's move on here a little bit and talk about the Democrats. So what's going on right now? How are the Republicans? What do those campaigns look like? Nancy Pelosi, you would think she was running for every single congressional seat because they are making every single Democratic congressional candidate tethered to Nancy Pelosi, despite the fact, I mean, obviously she's not the speaker right now. They don't have that opportunity. They need to get the 23 seats plus in order for that to occur. And it's interesting to see the Republicans are making her the big boogie woman. And of course, Donald Trump is the lightning rod for the left. But there's 51 Democratic congressmen and congresswomen, Ocasio-Cortez being one of them, Connor Lamb being another one, Donovan being another one out of Ohio, who are just running on opposing Nancy Pelosi. And there's 51 other Democrats who are opposing her as well, Democratic candidates. So it is interesting to see the Republican strategy trying to tie everyone to Nancy Pelosi. And I think, Connor Lamb representing the more moderate wing of the Democratic Party, Ocasio-Cortez representing the more liberal base of the Democratic Party, both sides, I think they really want and need new blood.
I think what we need is the competent wing of the Democratic Party.
That would
because
be
Nancy
great.
Pelosi is not that.
Well, you don't tell her that. She's the second wealthiest woman in Congress. These people are so freaking wealthy. She's the second wealthiest person in Congress. And it's just so difficult because she just swears to up and down that she is a great negotiator. And again, under Obama, we had a chance. There was 2 years. They got Obamacare passed, but it could have been a much better bill. And then they lost everything. And I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic, but I have learned my lesson the hard way regarding that. So that's the Republican strategy going forward. Is just going to attack Nancy Pelosi and be like, if we give up the House, then Nancy Pelosi is going to be the new speaker. And do you want that? And everyone says no. Also, the other approach is the Republican Party, as we learned from the Devin Nunes tapes that just came out this week, they are blatantly saying at this point, be like, so if we don't continue to hold the House, like Donald Trump's going to be impeached. So we probably want to do it.
Yeah, he said all this will go away.
All this greatness will go away.
Oh, you know how much fun you're having? That sense of superiority that you have.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just making your life better. It's not raising your paycheck or, making you healthier or making sure that, you're not going to fall into bankruptcy should you ever get just a little bit sick. But don't you feel good?
I do think Ocasio-Cortez Ocasio-Cortez has got to tighten up how she believes single payer can work.
Yeah.
Because that's very interesting.
Everything needs to be tightened up.
Everything has to be tightened up, and hopefully they do it. Interestingly enough, the Koch brothers, actually, their institute, it was a Koch brothers funded institute that found single payer or Medicare for all, which is obviously at its very core. I believe Truman was the one who came up with it. It's socialism. That is socialism. Like the fact that Donald Trump is going to give farmers $12 billion to offset the horrible tariffs that he is going to putting in place. It's going to cause a fucking trade war that we don't need to have right now. That's socialism, But the word just gets so drugged through the muck here. But they did have the Koch brothers, obviously very libertarian, do not like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has demonized them on Twitter as well, his favorite platform, because you don't actually have to talk to anyone face to face, because we see what happens when he does that.
Yep.
He grovels to them and loves them, unless, of course, it's an ally who he deems to be too weak to stand up to him. But they have found that the way that the Medicare system is right now will cost roughly $34 trillion over 10 years. And the plan that Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders put forward would cost roughly $32.4 trillion over 10 years. So they say it'll actually save money in the long run. Obviously, it would require a raising in taxes. Those offshore bank accounts that Paul Manafort is currently on trial for having, those would be like closed up all across the board. The tax loopholes and things like that would also be closed, and we would just as a nation have to realize that we're going to be running a deficit forever.
Yeah.
But if they can explain it and rationalize it, and this libertarian think tank who just crunched the numbers and came up with these results with I read it. It was 14 pages. There wasn't a lot of political bias in it. It's just a bunch of nerd stuff.
Yeah.
Math. Nerd. That's what I call it. Nerd stuff.
Nerd stuff.
Math. Nerd stuff. Get out of here, smart guy. What are you trying to build a bridge so I can drive over it? Go to your house and beat you up, you nerd. But that was an interesting result, and I thought that was actually quite promising when it comes to the idea for Medicare for all, and also. It's a political winner for the Democrats. Well over 50% of Americans now favor it because, quite frankly, it'll just simplify things. The main people, of course, who are against it, Big Pharma, they gave over $41 million to Congress, I believe just last year alone. I mean, it is crazy how much control they have. That's why we have Cory Booker out there refusing to take Canadian drugs or allow Canadian drugs to come down from Canada so people could maybe live. That's why the anti-marijuana advocates are oftentimes financed by Big Pharma as well,
Of course they are.
So they still control, they control Congress, and Congress controls the purse, and we'll see if it happens. But I think it's a political winner if framed properly. It's just a very easy one. Once again, with the socialist word, which is a four-letter word to most Americans, quite frankly, and the idea of my taxes are going to go up.
Well,
but either way, your taxes are going to go up. Mark my words. Because this is not a permanent tax cut for the middle class, only for the wealthy.
Exactly. Your taxes are absolutely going to go up no matter what. I mean, I think what the Democrats need to do is, at this point, a lot of Republicans, and not even necessarily Republicans, Trump supporters, a lot of Trump supporters, they have dug in their heels so hard that they are never, ever going to go with any sort of plan that comes from the Democrats, even if the Democrats can show them a chart that says, look, if you let us do this, then you are going to get this. And they can clearly show them.
You know
and
what,
they
man?
could even hand them like a big stack of cash and say, like, look, this is what you are going to have in 2 years. They could do that. And still, Trump voters would not in any way whatsoever flip. What they have to focus on is getting new voters, getting people mobilized, getting people actually coming out to the polls, because our voter turnout rates in America are fucking abysmal.
Well, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yes, there are.
Tuesday is not the best day for working class people to vote because they're working.
Yeah, Tuesday afternoon is bad.
I would not be surprised if Trump proposes it.
Yeah.
I really wouldn't, because that's what he does. He just picks and chooses, and these are political winners. The other big issue, obviously guns, that's beginning now to be a very significant issue for the Democratic Party. And I think that's another big political winner. 54% of Republicans now believe in more gun restrictions. So if they can run on that as well, obviously what we saw in Florida after Parkland, making 21 now to get the same gun that Nicholas Cruz was able to purchase. Unbelievable that he was able to purchase that damn gun. But now that's 21 years old to do that. Most Americans agree with universal background checks. That's like 78%, almost 80% of Americans believe in that. The bump stock restrictions, those are like political winners for the Democratic Party. And if they can lay that out, I think that they could do well. It's just the numbers are actually on their side on so many things.
Yeah.
But it's the message the messenger of the message that has just been totally freaking lacking. And again, the DNC, bankrupt, basically. That's why Hillary had to payroll them or bail them out, basically, and finance them for her campaign. So there's a lot of issues. It's a party that's searching. And I think as far as a party that's rebuilding after 8 years of Obama, it's doing okay.
It's a party. What the Democratic Party needs more than anything is passion. That is what people respond to, and that's what people responded to with Obama. Like, that's why people were so into him, was because there was passion behind it. There was very, very real passion behind it, and that's why people didn't respond to Hillary, because there was nothing.
Yeah, but
that's why people responded to Bernie as well, is because there was a lot of passion, and that's why people responded to Trump, was because there was passion, and that's why they continue to respond to Trump. Is because it's negative passion, but it's passion nonetheless.
Well, it's not negative to them. But also that passion that you talked about with Obama, because he left office over 50% approval rating, despite the fact that the legislative accomplishments are few and far between. African-American vote was down about half. And if you don't vote, that's a vote. That is you just saying, okay, I wash my hands of it.
Yeah.
And I don't even care. You vote, write yourself in, but I just think it's important to exercise your right just to make sure that you do it. As many times, you got to practice it.
Well,
but at the same time, that lack of feeling like Obama did what he said he was going to do, I think people were kind of feeling deflated. And then you got this guy running out there, saying all the things that he was saying, and now we have a situation that we're in now. I want to talk, lastly, we should talk about this, because Donald Trump had a tweet again. I deactivated my Twitter. I'm never getting back on.
Yeah.
Insta stories. Check out Puffin. The war on the media. This is an interesting phenomenon that we're seeing. This is not shocking that a president or a politician or anyone in the public eye, for that matter, doesn't like the media necessarily. Certainly not all the time. No one does, because the media is there. It's the fourth estate. It's supposed to keep people in check in some ways, although our media it's corporate media is amazing. But I want to talk to you, because Marcus and I were talking about this yesterday, I think. Donald Trump said regarding the media, specifically CNN, he loves his Fox News and things like that. He mentioned how it's fake news and how the media starts wars. And this is an interesting thing. This is, again, this is a point where Trump, obviously, as Marcus and I talked about, the media is not creating policy. But I would argue that the media, as we saw in 2002, when we were 2003, leading up to the Iraq War, man, that media can get some people on board.
They are
the drum beat.
Yeah, they can beat the drum, but they can't start the war. Because what he was talking about is that the media will lead the horse.
But you know what, man? I almost think that they could. You could go to any country in the world right now, and the media could come up with a narrative as to why that leader should leave.
I mean, maybe if we were in
that's what they did with.
They did it with the Spanish-American War, but that was also like 110, 120 years ago.
They did it with Saddam. They had Hans Blix over there. The rhetoric, all this weapons of mass destruction, never found, still not found. No one knows where they are. They do it all the time. Going back to Libya, they can make any government look like the worst government on earth, because it's a government and it's probably the worst government on earth. But that's what they do. Look at what's happening in Syria right now. ISIS is on the run. Assad is actually doing like a pretty good job killing ISIS. The Russians have taken over, but our media is crickets. They're crickets. And when it comes to corporate media, CNN is sponsored by Northrop Grumman, which is the
course.
Stark Industries in real life. So they do have a vested interest in the war effort. And so I actually agree with Donald Trump on that, although I disagree with him having his crowds, chant at the media, and I think it's getting very dangerous. And so that's why all of these things I just try to isolate sometimes. But I understand what he's saying, and I think that does resonate.
That's not what he's saying. All he's doing is he's trying to choose the phrases that are going to make his base angrier. All he's doing is to try to get them on their side. He's given them these these talking points like, well, now people go like, well, what the president says, that the media starts wars. Like we have to fight against the media. We can only listen to him because the media starts wars. That's red meat.
No, there
is zero substance to that. Like whatever point he's made.
Yeah.
I
saw it on Twitter, so it's got to be true.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like you're trying to read tea leaves, where you're looking at the dumb shit that he says and trying to find some meaning in it when there's none there.
No, the policies, it's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. I don't understand how you don't get that. Space Force. That point, I do think that we have to remember that these corporate media entities are run, and all of them, they are run by huge corporations that have a vested interest in war. And if they really want to hyper focus on a country and be like, they're the worst country on earth. By the way, ISIS, ISIS is second. This was 2 years ago. I think it was, I forget the numbers, but the cartels in Mexico had more kills than ISIS did.
Yeah. And
we don't hear anything about going to war with Mexico. If we're so concerned about human rights all over the world, well, buddy, it's right down there on our to the south. That place is brutal. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's another reason why.
No oil.
No, a lot of fentanyl.
Yeah. Oh man, that takes me back. That takes me back to college.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it takes me. Yeah, way
back. I love
back.
protesting the Iraq War. It was like some of the best times I ever had.
Yeah. Oh man, it was so much fun.
Yeah, we used to have signs and stuff. It didn't work.
No.
Definitely didn't stop that from happening. But man, we shouted.
We shouted. We marched around.
But that's what I mean. There's really nothing you can do. That's the sad. Once the media is on board with it. Once the politicians want it done, my God, did they take advantage of 9/11?
Speaking of the media, I would like to end on this. I would like to end on reading the terms of service, just a small part.
For Space Force?
No. A small part of the terms of service from the InfoWars website.
Oh my! Well, that's interesting. And that's something we should actually debate too. I mean, what do you think? He's off of YouTube. He's off of Facebook. Do you think it's right?
Well, you know what? I'm just gonna read this.
Okay.
I'm gonna let this speak for itself.
Okay.
You will not post anything libelous, defamatory, harmful, threatening, harassing, abusive, invasive of another's privacy, hateful, racially or ethnically objectionable, or otherwise illegal. You will not make threats to other users or people not associated with the site. If you violate these rules, your posts and/or username will be deleted. Remember, you are a guest here. It is not censorship if you violate the rules and your post is deleted. All civilizations have rules, and if you violate them, you can expect to be ostracized from the tribe.
And don't forget about her tactical bath. You're gonna want after a hard day of perusing the web. You got your fingertips are a little sweaty. You can just put it in the sink and just soak your fingertips. You don't have to bathe. I promise you that. So that's on the InfoWars site.
That is from the InfoWars terms of service. Yes,
it's a little censorship there alone.
That would, but you might call that the height of hypocrisy, because what Facebook what Facebook and YouTube and iTunes, what they did to Alex Jones completely 1000% reserves the right to do the exact same thing to people posting on his website.
We did talk about this as well. I think this was one of those shows. I did a conspiracy thing on Headline News talking about Alex Jones, and he has every right to have his platform on his website.
On his website, of course. No one is taking his website down.
Well, hopefully. I don't, because we can't go down that road. But the one thing that is kind of interesting to me is Mark Zuckerberg and what the hell is it? Jack. I don't even know his last name over there. The man who created the end of our times, Twitter. they're the ones who are trying to figure out and navigate what's allowed, what content's, defamatory, and what content shouldn't be allowed or should be allowed. And I don't trust these guys. They're a bunch of Silicon Valley assholes. They are a bunch of, Mark Zuckerberg, when you hear him speak, there's a video of Mark Zuckerberg when he was showing like how cool Facebook Live is. Remember that video where he's barbecuing with friends?
Get these meats, smoking these meats.
Smoking these
You guys
meats.
smoke meats? You guys want some smoked meats?
I swear to God, it's like, what's the name of the main lead in Westworld, the female?
Dolores.
Dolores is more human. It is like crazy. These people, I don't think they understand human beings very well.
Not really.
And let's not forget, Facebook was solely created to rate women's attractiveness. It was just trying to get laid. It was never supposed to be what it became. So I think we have to be cautious when Jack or Mark Zuckerberg or the people over at YouTube, YouTube's a little bit different, but specifically those two platforms, I don't know if they should be censoring content because I'm not sure if I trust what they believe is something that is unworthy to be seen by the public eye.
But that's the thing, is that they're not, I don't believe that they're censoring it, because they have a choice as to whether they want to host this on their platform or not. If they were censoring it, then that'd be like if the FCC was doing that. If the FCC went to YouTube and said, you have to take down all InfoWars videos, that's censorship. That is 100% censorship.
What about the episode where Alex Jones interviews Trump? I can't believe that happened.
Yeah, I know. It's very good to be here.
That's fine.
But that is absolutely censorship. What this is YouTube saying, we don't want you to be on our platform because these are private companies.
Right.
And if this happened to us, if YouTube or iTunes said that, we're just not going to have your show on here on our platform anymore, I'd be fucking livid because it would absolutely, I would be livid. I would be extremely pissed off, but I can't really say censorship because I can still put any of our shows on our website. We can still still host them anywhere. We can still put them on the InfoWars website.
Yeah, but it's like
these because that's the funny thing is all these conservatives are screaming censorship,
and liberals, they're both doing it.
Well, but all these people are screaming censorship about all of this shit. The only way to prevent this is if you had government regulation. If you had a government agency, the FCC, coming in and telling companies what they can and cannot do. That's the only way to prevent this. Otherwise, all of these platforms have a complete and total right to deny anybody.
I agree with you, and I agree with you. However, Facebook and Twitter, it's for some stupid reason, hopefully the tide's turning on this, is taken very seriously.
Of course it's
and
taken
they are
serious.
Controlling the conversation, and it's those people, those isolated people who are now controlling the conversation of this country, which should never happen. So my question about freedom of speech is, do you have freedom of speech if you're screaming in a solitary confinement cell? It's like if no one can hear you, if you don't have access, the same access as the majority of the people, is that a violation of your First Amendment right?
Well,
that's the big question.
Well, the logic follows there is that once a corporation becomes a certain size, then it becomes the property of the government.
Well, once it goes public, these are publicly traded companies.
Well, they're publicly traded companies, but I don't own any shares of Facebook. You don't own any shares of Facebook. Like, we have no...
Do I own?
That's the thing.
I'm going to start doing that soon.
Like, all publicly traded means is that the public is able to buy these things. But that's the thing, is that I don't get anything from Facebook. I don't receive any of the profits. If I were to buy Facebook, then I would receive some of the profits. But
you could.
But that's the thing.
It's the access to it.
It's the access to it.
Right.
But I have to choose. I have to choose to do that, just like I have to choose to be on Facebook.
Right. It's just they're very significant platforms of speech. And I just don't trust these guys taking people's comments down or whatever it is. I think everyone should just get off of the damn things and stop. All you do is give them power.
Yeah.
When you allow them to be your homepage for your every damn thought that no one needs to hear about, quite frankly. But it's an interesting conversation, and I understand Alex Jones is extremely livid about it. And it's going to cut into his profits. At the same time, he did have his followers dox the parents of Sandy Hook victims. So I don't have a lot of sympathy. But again, going back to what I just said in the way earlier ago, it's like the speech you hate, it's still protected speech.
Of
and
course,
we have to be careful not to go down the road of eroding our First Amendment. So.
The only thing that the First Amendment guarantees is that the government will not arrest you for your speech. That's the only thing that First Amendment guarantees. It doesn't. It doesn't guarantee you that the news has to cover you. It doesn't guarantee you. Like if you go way back to the founding fathers, like it would be like saying that free speech guarantees me a spot in every pamphlet.
Oh, Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah,
Mr. Jefferson, thank you for being here.
Yes, that would be
but
the way back equivalent.
At the same
of
time,
that.
though, again, we can do this all day.
Yeah,
at the same time, they're huge platforms.
They are huge platforms,
yeah.
but so were pamphlets way back in the day. Those were that was the only way that you could get any
They were
of your
big in
news out.
Virginia. It's like the swamplands of D.C. and Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you, people were making this same argument so many years ago.
Well, it's an important one to watch out for because we don't. If you silence others, at some point you will be silenced yourself, and then it's like it's a poem or that people really like or a saying.
What
the one I don't know.
The whole what is it? Oh, they came for Alex
they
Jones
came
and
for
I
the
said
fruit
nothing.
cake, and then I said nothing, and then they came for the hamburger, and I said nothing. Then they came for the pizza, and I realized I didn't have anyone to help me defend it or something. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Oh no, yeah, they came for Infowars, and I said nothing because I never doxed the parents of children who were murdered by psychopaths. So yeah.
It is interesting. Now, HLN, I got to mention Bill Cooper and Alex Jones. 4% of Americans believe the world's run by reptilians.
4%?
Yeah, that's like 10 million. What is it? What do we have, 320 million people? Let me do some quick math and make up a number. I think the number's 9 million. There is like millions of people that actually believe it. What started out to be a joke has definitely gotten out of hand when it comes to all that.
There's a lot of jokes that have gotten out of hand in recent years.
Yeah, apparently Vice News was a joke, and then the ex-co-founder really takes that seriously now.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and say 4chan is possibly a joke that got out of hand that eventually resulted in a president. It's a fascinating. One day someone is going to write the history of 4chan, and I think we are going to. I've said this on the show before, but I 100% believe it that history books will be talking about 4chan as a driving force in American culture. It's the driving force in American culture that nobody knew about. But it was there.
I don't know about history.
It was there the entire time.
I don't know about history books, but I'll tell you, history plasma tablets. They will be talking about it for sure.
History plasma tablets. Yes, when we start to, because the history books are going to have to start talking about the internet as a true cultural force, as a true driving force of history, and there's gonna 4chan is the secret history of the internet.
Absolutely, and that's why it's like when the incel. Killed the people. Everyone in the mainstream media was like, incel. It's like, yes, incels. They exist. Like, how don't you?
Yeah.
Come on.
And even then, incel is that is a tip of the iceberg.
Oh my god.
As far as what I mean, people really have no idea what 4chan was able to accomplish.
Yeah.
It's
speaking of information,
fascinating.
Going back to textbooks, I mean, really, it's California and Texas. They were the ones who kind of dictated our history for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be college courses about 4chan one day.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We love you all very much. Follow me on Instagram at Ben Kissel 1. Marcus Parks is Marcus Parks for everything. I got some great footage of Puffin. He is adorable.
Oh yeah.
And this is actually a terrible thing they do in Korea. It's very controversial in Korea. But they do this dog meat. It's like a festival during the hottest days.
Hey, that's my name.
Hey, that's my name. Dog meat.
That's my name.
That's my name. And it's this festival, and apparently the old timers, they think it helps with their vitality and their erectile dysfunction, and they say it keeps you cool. So there's thousands of dogs that get murdered, and they kill them in horrible, horrible ways, and it's absolutely a travesty and a tragedy. There's big protests in Korea. This is not a well accepted tradition, but it is what they do. And so, if you can adopt a dog, please do it from there or from anywhere, because there's a lot of dogs in need. And little Puffin, whenever he's bad, because I got him from Korea, I'm gonna say, if you're bad, you could have been a Pokeball. and then he'll look at me and he said, oh, thank you for saving me. You better be thankful.
Oh, he's very, very thankful. Oh, yeah, I know Georgie's very thankful for me.
Oh, George is the cutest.
Oh, she's so cute.
All right, everyone, hail yourselves. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. Can't wait to have my kids answer a question on their on a quiz.
What?
In college, and the answer's shit posting.
Uh-oh, what?